So today I'm going to be going over some highlights from both chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5 being all about entrepreneurship, and chapter 6 being all about management and leadership. So when we start talking about entrepreneurship, it really just involves the risk of starting and managing your own business. And so people become entrepreneurs for various reasons. And a lot of you, probably are familiar with some of those because I know some of you are in our entrepreneurship program at UAPTC. But it could be that they just have a really good passionate for something and they would like to actually start making money do it. Sometimes it's just for the fact that people don't want to work for other people. But typically, entrepreneurs characteristically have, a very high need for achievement. Typically, good interpersonal and communication skills. Those come in very handy when you start your own business. And sound managerial and these days technological skills or the knowledge of that is very useful when becoming entrepreneurs. So I'm going to go over some things that some highlights from your chapter and kind of expand on them a little bit to kind of review those. So in your book, at the very beginning of chapter 5, it starts to talk about why, again, people become entrepreneurs. And I kind of gone over some of that because, starting your own business can and usually is taking a pretty significant risk. So a lot of times people want to develop a company that will grow into a major corporation. Now, not everybody. Some people start businesses and want to stay small, and that's awesome too, right? But there are 4 main reasons that your book lists for wanting to become entrepreneurs. One, the opportunity for profit, which is a lot of reasons, or the main reason I say why people want to start their own business to make money. Independence. So again, not having to work for somebody else. Personal satisfaction, just that need for achievement, wanting to go for your dreams and your goals and actually doing it. And then your lifestyle. So, because even though owning your own business does take a ton of time, and if you already own your own business, you know that, you also can choose your lifestyle and kind of work it the way that you want to. All right. There are different types of entrepreneurs, and your book mentions your classic entrepreneurs and your micropreneurs. And micropreneurs are ones that start business and they want to keep their business small or plan to keep their business small. They also talks about multipreneurs, and multipreneurs are they usually start many companies or several companies, more than one, multiple companies. And then we also have intrapreneurs, and these are people that tend to be innovative within a large corporation. So maybe they come up with their own product or idea within an organization. They work for an organization. Those are considered intrapreneurs, and that might be a term that you aren't as familiar with. And so it goes to talk about in your book about some different characteristics that would make successful entrepreneurs. And so some of those would be self-confidence is a big one, right? Being independent is another one. Typically, they're ambitious and creative, passionate, energetic, and mostly committed, okay? Because it is a big commitment, to start your own business. And again, and I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of them have a high need for achievement, and they're willing to take those risks. And so it talks about, how, in your book, it talks about how small businesses really contribute to our U.S. economy. And they play a huge role, a very important role, because small businesses account for about 99% or more, or a little bit more actually, of all employer firms, and produce about half of the U.S. Economic output. So that is huge. So small businesses play a huge role in our economy. And it talks about how most new private sector jobs created in the United States over the past several years were in small firms. So something to think about. It also talks about the SBA, or the Small Business Administration, and this defines a small business as one that is independently owned and operated with a local base of operations and not dominant in its field. So it's not going to be the sole producer of whatever that is in its field. So usually the Small Business Administration will define small businesses by size, and depending on which textbook or what you're looking up, but a lot of times that size is less than 500 employees. So something to think about there too. And small businesses, there's small businesses found in every field, but they are prominent and they really dominate the service industry, construction, and wholesale. And it also talks about retail as well. So if you're wanting to start your own business, there are some different steps that you should take. And the first one being just having that idea. So after you find that idea that really satisfies a market need, then you or a small business owner should choose a form of business organization, like we talked about in chapter 4, like the different forms of business organization, again, being mainly sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations with additional branches of those. So then you need to prepare a formal business plan that really helps the business owner analyze the feasibility, if you will, for their idea. And we're going to do a very small business plan in your chapters 5 and 6 assignment. It's just to kind of get your feet wet and kind of get an idea of some things you think about when you are actually making a business plan. And then when you go to make your business plan in general, the written plan really describes in detail the idea for the business and how it will be implemented and operated. And it will also help you obtain both like debt and equity financing for your new business, because you'll take your business plan into the bank or wherever you're trying to go, or wherever you go to try to get a loan or anything like that. And they will go through your business plan and kind of see if they feel like if it will be marketable, if it's a fit, if it's something that they feel like it's worth financing. So your business plan is super, super important. If you ever went to a bank asking for a loan for your business with nothing, I can't imagine them actually giving you a loan. So business plan is super important. And then it kind of goes to talk about why managing small business presents challenges for the owners. And a lot of times it's because the owner is involved in all aspects of the operation, typically in a small business. So and when people are starting off, they don't always have the funds to be able to hire people to do different things. So the owner himself is usually doing all the things, hiring and retaining like key employees, doing the payroll, doing this, doing that. So doing all the things. So, but being able to hire people outside of that would really free up the owner's time if they can afford it. So doing that planning, to give them more time to do that planning and strategizing, monitoring the market conditions for their business, etc. So the business owners actually do a lot. And if you own your own business, especially starting out, you're pretty much doing everything until you start making those profits and being able to, offload some of those duties to other people. And it talks about some advantages and disadvantages of facing, or that small business owners face. And again, because of that streamlined staffing and structure, small businesses can be efficiently operated. All right. So they have, typically small businesses have flexibility to respond to changing market needs or conditions. And small firms can serve specialized markets more profitably than larger corporations or firms can. And they typically can provide that higher level of personal service. But there's some disadvantages, and those, limited managerial skills. Typically, it's harder for small business to raise capital or for startup expansion, if you will. And, complying to different government regulations. And again, it's a huge commitment to the business owner as an entrepreneurship anywhere, especially in that small business ownership. And then again, it talks toward the end of the chapter, it talks about the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and how they can help. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but the SBA is the main federal agency serving small businesses. So it is a federal agency. So it's government ran. And it provides guarantees of private lender loans for small businesses. They also offer a wide range of management assistance services, including publications, some different courses, consulting. Sometimes they can help you with your business plan depending on the different branches. They have special programs for women, minorities, and veterans. So definitely a great service. And most cities or bigger towns have their own branch of the SBA. We have one in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then to wrap up chapter 5, the very end of the chapter, it talks about some different trends that are really shaping entrepreneurship and small business ownership. And it talks about changing in demographics, society, technology. These are all really shaping the future of entrepreneurship and small businesses here in America. And then more than ever, opportunities really exist for entrepreneurs of all ages or backgrounds. And e-commerce has really played a huge part in this. So many people have started businesses and become famous from TikTok and, all of the things. So technology has played a huge, huge role. And it also talks about the numbers of women and minority-owned businesses really continue to rise, which is awesome. And so just some great things to think about as we're wrapping up chapter 5. It's an awesome chapter. I hope everybody enjoys it. But it really kind of flows into chapter 6, all right? So chapter 6 being all about management and leadership. And so again, I think 4, 5, and 6 kind of are great piggybacking on each other. But in chapter 6, it kind of goes into the roles of management. And, what is that? And if you think about the word management, what do you think that may be? All right. So management typically is just the process of guiding the development, maintenance, and allocation of resources to obtain organizational goals. And so managers are the people in the organization that are responsible for developing and carrying out those goals, if you will. And so there are 4 primary functions of management that your book kind of goes into, and it's planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Those are the 4 main ones, and you'll need to know those. And so by using these 4 functions, managers really work to increase the efficiency and the effectiveness of their employees and typically projects and whatnot within their organization. And so we're going to get into the first primary function of management being planning. I'm sure you've heard the old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But that's not very cliche. It's pretty true. I'm a kind of a type A planner, so I love that. But yes, and not everybody's planners. But when it comes to organization, planning is huge, right? So planning, again, deciding what needs to be done, all right, in a nutshell, super easy. Then you have to identify how it will be done, all right, and then and typically when, and then who should do that, all right. So those are all parts of planning. And so managers usually use 4 different types of planning. We've got strategic, tactical, operational, and contingency planning. Strategic planning is that long range planning, typically 1 to 5 years. So broad goals, determining necessary resources to accomplish those goals, etc. Tactical planning has a shorter time frame, less than a year. And these are more specific objectives that support those broader strategic goals. Then we have our operational planning that just really creates specific standards, methods, policies, procedures, anything like that are used in specific functional areas of an organization. And then you have lastly, our contingency planning. And these plans identify alternative courses of action for very unusual or crisis situations. And these have really, contingency planning, the importance of it has been on the rise due to lots of natural disasters. And think back to COVID, nobody planned for that. Nobody was ready for that. So contingency planning has always been important, but it has been more on the forefront of people's minds and organizations' minds these days, and because of the unexpected things that have happened in the last decade or so. So it talks about the primary responsibilities of managers and how organizing, especially in organizing activities, and organizing just really involves coordinating and allocating a firm's resources to carry out its plans. And this could include developing a structure for people, for departments, different activities in the firm, etc. And typically this is done by dividing those up into tasks. So think of division of labor, and then grouping jobs and employees, departmentalization, and assigning authority and responsibility. So that would be delegation. So you've got delegation, assigning those responsibilities, all right? We've got departmentalization, so grouping jobs and employees. This is typically based on, skills and stuff like that. And then division of labor, so dividing up tasks, all right? In our economy, if you've taken macro or microeconomics, division of labor is huge, and we learn in econ that division of labor is necessary in order for our economy to work, because we are not all skilled in every single thing that needs to be done. So being able to divide up by division of labor, I might be great at doing one thing, you might be great at doing another, and that's how we do things more efficiently. But anyways, so I digress. I squirreled. But, it talks about the different leadership styles that really influence a corporate culture in your book. And it just kind of mentions that leading really is the process of guiding and motivating others toward achievement of organizational goals. And I don't know if you've all heard this, but it's still very true that not all managers are leaders. Just because somebody is your manager doesn't make them a great leader. So kind of keep that in mind. So it talks about how managers have unique leadership styles that range from autocratic to free reign. And this is a set of attitudes, values, standards of behavior that distinguishes one organization from another. All right. And that is what we kind of call corporate culture. And then a corporate culture, say that fast 5 times, really evolves over time and is based on the accumulated history of the organization, including the vision of the founders, right? And so, leadership styles really can help influence corporate culture. And then, in your book, it goes in to talk about how organizations control activities. And so it talks about controlling. And so another main function of management. And that is a process of assessing the organization's progress toward accomplishing its goals. All right. So the control process is kind of as follows. It sets performance standards. So your goals. All right. Then you measure those performance. You measure the actual performance. You can compare the actual performance to established performance standards. And then you take corrective action if necessary. And then lastly, you use that information gained from that process to set future performance standards. So if you have ever gotten an evaluation at your work, maybe every 6 months or a year, this is kind of the steps that they follow, if you think about it, when you are getting that performance evaluation, all right? Typically, the company already has goals set, so standards set, and they are looking at each individual employee and trying to decide, okay, look, what have they done? Let me measure their performance. Have they met the standards, all right? Have they gone above them? Have they not met them, And so then we take action based on that. Do we get raised because we've gone above and beyond? Have we not met our goals? So do we need to, do some corrective action there? And then sometimes as a manager, if none of your employees or the majority of your employees are not meeting these certain standards, maybe we need to go back and reevaluate our standards. What's not working? All right. And so just kind of something to think about as you're reading through that part of the chapter. And then it talks about different roles managers take on in different organizational settings. So it mentions that just in an informational role, the manager may act as an information gatherer. And so they could be an information distributor, or they could be a spokesperson for the company. So a manager's interpersonal roles really are based on various interactions with other people. So, depending on the situation, a manager may need to act as a figurehead, or a leader or a liaison. Again, different various things that a manager's role could look like. And then toward the end of the chapter, it talks about what managerial skill set is necessary for success. And it goes in to mention that managerial skills fall into three basic categories. We've got our technical, we've got our human relations, and our conceptual skills. And so specialized areas of knowledge and expertise and the ability to actually apply knowledge make a manager's technical skills. So human relations skills include the ability to understand human behavior, to communicate effectively with others, and to motivate individuals to actually accomplish their objectives. So it also talks about conceptual skills and how they include the ability to really view the organization, understand how various parts are interdependent, and assess how the organization relates to its external environment. So those are kind of the skills that are great for managerial success. And then lastly, it talks about, chapter 6 talks about the trends that will affect management in the future. And it talks about how, preparing for crisis management, which is, I've kind of already mentioned, which is huge. The increasing use of information technology, which is also huge. AI is the buzz lately for the last couple of years. And, me personally, as I, teach a lot of things that you could possibly use AI, like in social media marketing and digital marketing in general, as well as other things. It's not a bad thing at all, just learning how to use it correctly. So just kind of some food for thought, if you will. And just really need, information technology, the need for manager multinational culture to be able to manage multinational culture. So when we going back to crisis management, so really that's going to require quick action, telling the truth about the situation, the crisis in front of us, and then putting the best people on the task to actually correct the situation, whatever that looks like. A lot of large corporations have had to go into crisis management. If you look into different scandals or anything like that, one thing that comes to my mind is Target, and that is one of our Fortune 100 companies. So I'll bring Target up. Back in I don't remember the exact year, maybe 2013ish, is when they had that big scandal as far as their credit card. The credit card system, if you will, got hacked into, and so a lot of people's credit card information became vulnerable, and so that is one that comes off the top of my head. So they had to go into crisis management mode because that became public really fast, and obviously hurt their business there for a little bit. They bounced back, but just something to keep in mind. And then they had to kind of change the way that they did things going forward. But anyways, and then it also talks about how management must learn from crisis to prevent it from actually happening again. So again, using that latest information, technology, such as, there's different types of like dashboard software, managers can really make quicker, better informed decisions. All right. And then one last thing that it mentions is talking about as more companies go global, there's really a need for multinational cultural management skills, as I mentioned, because that's really growing. So managers must really set a good example of creating that personal involvement for all employees to really develop that culture of trust. So that is a wrap on chapters 5 and 6. And again, just hitting some highlights to kind of help you dive into a little bit deeper. But I hope you enjoy these chapters, and I will be chatting with everyone soon.